Good evening and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of February 16th, 2015. And I would like first, before we get started, just to give you a couple of reminders, please. There are staff reports in the back of the table for those who may not have them. And also for our home viewers, there are staff reports and agendas at sanbruno.ca.gov. And all Planning Commission meetings are recorded and televised on Cable TV Channel 1 and replayed on Thursday at 2 p.m. And I request that if you can please silence your phones, and if you have to take any conversations, to please take them outside of the room. Thank you. And I'd like now, roll call, please.
Chair Johnson.
Here.
Vice Chair Chase.
Here.
Commissioner Samad.
Here.
Commissioner Mishra.
Here.
Commissioner Yasodi.
Here.
Commissioner Peterson.
Here.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like if our director could lead us in the pledge, please.
Happy to. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have 2 minutes, 2 sets of minutes. One set from January the 6th, and 2015, and the other set from January the 20th. We'll need a motion to approve each set separately, please.
Motion, through Chair. Motion to approve the minutes for January 6th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. And now,
Through the chair,
yes.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes for January 20th, 2015.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions?
Yes. I wasn't here.
All right. Thank you for that. Motion carries. And the next item are communications. Is there any communication from staff this evening?
Chair Johnson, we have no additional communications this evening. Thank you.
Okay. The next item is public comment, and this is where items that are not on the agenda that can be presented. Feel free to go to and step to the microphone and present anything that may not be on the agenda. Okay. The next item is conflict of interest. Is there any conflict of interest in the commissioners for items that are on the agenda this evening? Okay. Hearing none. The public hearing is now open, and the first item, let me get that, excuse me. The first item is 749 Magnolia Avenue. It's a request for a use permit to exceed 44% of lot coverage, requirement is 46%, and to exceed 1825 square feet of living area with a one-car garage per sections 12.200.030B.3 and 12.200.080.A.2 of the San Bruno Municipal Code. Staff report, please.
Thank you and good evening. As stated, the applicant has applied for a use permit to exceed the 44% lot coverage requirement and to exceed 1,825 square feet of living area with a one-car garage. The site is located on the west side of Magnolia Avenue between Sycamore Avenue and Keynes Avenue. Site area is 5,000 square feet and is currently developed with a single-family residence. The one-story single-family residence contains 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a living room, dining room, kitchen, laundry room, and a one-car garage. The applicant is proposing a one-story addition to the rear of the existing single-family dwelling. What's important to note is that the existing family room, laundry room, and bathroom located towards the rear of the existing home would be demolished and replaced with a new master bedroom, family room, laundry room, and a new bathroom. The net new addition amounts to 407 square feet. The existing home consists of wood shingles, and the applicant is proposing to incorporate a stucco finish on the existing and proposed elevations. The front elevation would also incorporate a stone veneer base, which would wrap around the left and right side elevations. The existing horizontal siding located on the upper portion of the front elevation would also remain. The project was reviewed by the Architecture Review Committee at their January meeting. At that meeting, the Architecture Review Committee forwarded the project to the Planning Commission with minor staff recommendations, which included items such as updating the project data chart to accurately reflect existing and proposed conditions, indicate the existing and proposed window trim on the plans, incorporate a green building statement, and ensure the detached accessory building is relocated to ensure compliance with development standards. The applicant has submitted revised plans addressing these items. Overall, staff does find that the addition complies with the residential design guidelines. We find that the addition is well integrated with the existing single-family home. It's relatively simple design. As stated, it's a one-story addition to the rear of an existing single-family dwelling. Therefore, it's continuing the overall simple building form. The applicant's also incorporating exterior finishes that are found throughout the neighborhood. In regards to the entitlements, as previously indicated, we do have a lot coverage entitlement. The overall intent of that is to ensure that there is outdoor usable space on the lot. Staff does find that there still is a significant amount of open space. Specifically, the rear yard varies between 15 feet and 32 feet, where the 10 feet is the actual minimum requirement. The front yard also measures 18 feet, thereby providing additional outdoor usable space. Regarding parking, a use permit is required for exceeding 1,825 square feet of living area with a one-car garage. The addition in combination with the existing square footage amounts to 1,925 square feet of living area. I would like to point out that the existing one-car garage is set back from the face of the structure, thereby creating a long driveway along that northern property line, which could accommodate additional vehicles on site. Staff did set a courtesy notice and the required legal notice, and we did not receive any comments from the public. Staff supports the project and would recommend that the Planning Commission approve the use permit request, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. Do the commissioners have any questions for staff?
Yeah, one question. Go ahead.
Commissioner Peterson?
The proposed expansion is 1935 square feet, right? And you read it as 1925. I just wondered if your report was different.
So the overall living area would be 1,935 square feet. The overall net new addition is 407 square feet.
Oh, okay. You didn't say anything about it, but that seems to be a very modest amount of space, larger than the 1825. So that would be one of the reasons arguing for approval of this.
Yes, so as noted, the entitlement is for exceeding 1,825 square feet of living area with a one-car garage, and they're at 1,935 square feet, so they're exceeding that threshold by 110 square feet of living area.
Which is relatively small, would you
Correct.
agree? I mean, that was my interpretation.
Correct, staff would agree.
Okay. And this is trivial but curious. You spelled the word match, M-A-T-C-H-E. And the reason I mention that is suggests that spell check program might help. Thank you.
I would agree, yes.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for staff? Thank you. Hearing none, I'll officially open the public hearing, and if the applicant can please step forward and present your project, state your name and details of your project, please.
My name is Kunal Patel. I'm the property owner at 749 Magnolia. And what we're proposing is an addition of one master bedroom in the back of the property, basically, and extra space for, we're adding about 3 to 4 feet, roughly off the top of my head, to the back of the house, which would extend the kitchen, laundry room area, and an additional bathroom in the back. engaged right now and looking to get married this year. We're definitely getting married this year, so hopefully.
Thank you for the clarification. It's on the record.
Good to know. So we're looking to expand the house by 1 bedroom just in case, or not in case, but for additional family planning later on. So that's the summary of the addition of the house.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant from the commissioners? Okay, thank you for your presentation. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak on this matter? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to planning discussion.
Through the chair.
Commissioner Peterson.
I'd like to ask staff if there would be a place in the explanation of the findings to mention that the amount of living area that is over 1825 is a relatively small amount, and that's part of the rationale for finding approval of this application.
Any other comments from commissioners? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Wait, could I ask
I'm
if
sorry.
staff might have a reply?
Sure, through the chair. If you look at page 5 under item 2, there's a finding there that does talk about the proposed addition and the size of the addition. So perhaps that's been discussed already under number 2 on page 5. And if you'd like for us to modify that in some way, we certainly could.
Well, after 1935 square feet of living area, if you put a comma, which is a relatively small amount of space over the specified amount for a one-car garage.
Perhaps what we could do is, Matt had indicated, the actual addition, I think, is 407 square feet. What we could do is to indicate that of the 1,935, as he presented, only 407 feet is the actual addition, something like that. Would that work for you?
Sure,
Okay,
that's great.
We'll add that.
I just wanted to, I like the idea of reality coming, of the relatively modest amount of size over the requirement where you're required to have a two-car garage. I think that's material in considering the approval or denial of it. That's all. Thank you.
Sure.
Through the chair.
Commissioner Mishra?
To add to that, I would say that we don't want to detract from the fact that there is a significant parking space in front of the house. And so it's a case by case. It doesn't apply. Your comment will probably not apply to the next project who may have a shorter driveway space, but we do want to mention that because the driveway is longer, it kind of justifies having one car.
Right, that's
Yeah.
mentioned in another part of the
Right.
approval
Exactly.
findings.
It's actually that paragraph.
That is correct.
Yeah.
The last sentence of that paragraph describes that condition.
Exactly.
Any other comments? Okay. None?
I'd like to make a motion. I move the commission approve use permit 14-20 based on finding of fact 1 through 6 and conditions of approval 1 through 26.
Second?
Any discussion?
Through the chair, does that
Commissioner Chase?
include the additional comments there? Commissioner Peterson?
Oh, right, with the comments that I discussed with staff. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And
All-
second to that?
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. There is a 10-day appeal process before any action can take place on the project. All right, the next item of business is item B, 5B, and that's 448 San Mateo Avenue. And it is a request for an architectural review permit to allow architectural changes to the facade of an existing storefront, and a use permit to allow alcoholic beverage sales within a restaurant per sections 1284, 210, 1296, 120, C12, and 12108-010 of the San Bruno Municipal Court. Staff report, please.
Yes, Madam Chair. This proposed application involves the relocation of an existing restaurant here in town on San Mateo Avenue. The existing restaurant is the Isla Restaurant. It's a restaurant that serves Filipino cuisine, and it's currently located at 422 San Mateo Avenue. This existing restaurant would relocate to this location. This location previously was occupied by the Paper Moon Restaurant. As indicated, there are two entitlements being requested, an architectural review permit and also a conditional use permit for alcohol sales. Staff has been working with the applicants and their architect on a variety of exterior improvements to the structure. These exterior improvements would be visible from the public right-of-way and therefore require an architectural review permit. The applicants are also proposing to sell beer and wine with food within the restaurant. There would not be a separate bar, but the beer and wine would be served with their food within the restaurant, and that requires a conditional use permit for alcohol sales. The application has been reviewed by various departments, including community development, public services, police, and fire. And conditions, recommended conditions, are within your staff report from all of those departments. This application also went to the Architecture Review Committee at the committee's January 12th meeting and was presented, discussed, and there were recommendations by the Architecture Review Committee. The proposed project involves a number of changes to the exterior elevations and reprogramming of the interior space of the former Paper Moon Restaurant. Right now, the building is under demolition, interior demolition, preparing for the new improvements. The location is within our downtown on San Mateo Avenue. It's fairly centrally located. There are 21 parking spaces directly to the rear of the building off of Mastic. There are 12 parking spaces that are angle parking spaces that come in can be accessed off of San Mateo Avenue. This property is shared with the restaurant next door, Cleo's Brazilian Steakhouse. As far as some of the improvements being proposed, I'll go through those with you. As far as the San Mateo Avenue frontage, staff and the Architecture Review Committee worked with the applicant and architect to try to encourage a more direct connection with the street, with San Mateo Avenue. As you may recall, the primary access to the Paper Moon Restaurant was from this side, a side entry off the court. And so the intent of this application and the work that the staff and Architecture Review Committee has done with the applicant and the architect has been to really accentuate an entry on San Mateo Avenue, to have a strong connection with our main downtown street. And I think this application has done a good job of that. You'll notice in some of the improvements that the main access would be from San Mateo Avenue and no longer from the side entry off of the court, the interior court. So let me go through some of the improvements being proposed. On San Mateo Avenue, that frontage, for example, a new glass storefront doorway. The windows would be replaced. Instead of the arched windows, there would be rectangular windows. The prior neon lighting signage would be removed and new lighting and signage would be installed. There would be a veneer base along the frontage along San Mateo Avenue. There would be a wood finish on the upper portion of the front facade, a raw wood veneer finish on the upper portion of the facade, a new sign, a tile accent band, new signage, and then the exterior paint is kind of a somewhat lightened cherry cola paint, and that would be on a stucco finish. There would be an awning running the full length of the entry above, I should say above the doorway and windows, and that's along the San Mateo Avenue frontage. Along the Cypress Court, the side frontage of the building, side elevation. Again, the side entry door would be relocated and made smaller to de-emphasize that doorway, be primarily an exit doorway, primarily. There would be murals, 3 murals along that wall, kind of murals that describe the heritage, the culture of the Filipino restaurant and theme of this particular business. Again, cherry cola paint, stucco. The existing small sign, there would be an existing small sign near the doorway. And then kind of looking at the Mastic Avenue rear elevation, at the Architecture Review Committee, there was some discussion about trying to make sure that the business was identified from Mastic, but there wasn't attention drawn to the rear doorway, that the rear doorway be really more intended for employees, more of a service doorway, but yet there would be a sign and an attractive finish as viewed from Mastic, and I think they've done a nice job of that. So overall, as staff has looked at this application, we believe that the applicant and architect have complied with the recommendations of the Architecture Review Committee that reviewed this application, that in terms of the transit corridors plan, which is a key guide for this particular property, that as far as really accentuating the frontage on San Mateo Avenue, they're doing an excellent job in terms of not only their exterior architecture, but also in terms of the interior programming, really having a waiting area on the inside as you look at their floor plan off of San Mateo Avenue, so really programming the interior space to really support a primary entry on San Mateo Avenue. We find that the proposal overall is consistent with our general plan as well, and as I mentioned, consistent with the recommendations of the Architecture Review Committee. Staff has prepared findings in your staff report, findings for support of an action of approval on this project, both for the use permit for alcohol sales. We see that the serving of alcohol with a meal should not be a problem at all. In this case, we don't expect any negative consequences of that, so we prepared findings of fact in support of the use permit for alcohol sales. Also, findings of fact for the architecture review permit. As I mentioned, we find the proposal, consistent with other architecture and buildings in the surrounding area, consistent with the TCP, the Transit Corridors Plan, the general plan, and recommendations of the Architecture Review Committee. We've also prepared for your consideration this evening for both the conditional use permit for alcohol sales and for the architecture review permit recommended conditions of approval. Again, those are in the staff report. And I would point out a couple of these. For example, under the conditional use permit, the hours of operation would be 11 to 11. That should be known, 11 to 11, 7 days a week. The community development director, myself in this position, would have the opportunity, if perchance they didn't abide by the conditions of approval, to pull back the CUP and bring it back before the Planning Commission for consideration. The summary of hearing, that is the conditions of approval that you would be presumably approving this evening, would need to go to ABC, Alcohol Beverage and Control Board, as part of their application. So those are some of the highlights of conditions under the conditional use permit. Under the architecture review permit, we have conditions here pertaining to maintaining the site. That's condition number 1, on an ongoing basis. That if any graffiti is placed on the exterior of the building, that would need to be removed in 24 hours. If not, the city would have the right to go in, remove it, and then bill the property owner. We're also asking that the restaurant operator ensure that garbage and recyclables are handled in a way that meets city standards. And there are a number of other conditions here as well from the various departments that I mentioned earlier. Community development, public services, fire, police. I would like to add a couple of conditions, and these have to do with the fact that as I walked the site, I noticed that, for example, in the exterior parking lot area on site, there are a couple of planting areas, and I noticed that one was completely without landscape materials, and at least another one had very overgrown landscape materials. It's very typical with a condition like this, an application like this, in circumstances as I just described, that we would ask that the applicant install plantings and an irrigation system and replace any stressed plant materials. So I think that should be done. I also noticed that some curbing in the parking lot area is broken, and that should be replaced as well. So my suggestion in terms of added conditions are as follows. One pertaining to the landscaping and planting, irrigation, and the other having to do with repairs in the parking lot area. The first one, the applicant shall prepare and install a landscape and irrigation plan to address missing or distressed landscape materials in the existing exterior planting areas within the parking lot area on the site to the satisfaction of the Community Development Director. Again, here we're really looking for installing and replacing stressed or missing materials. Second one, the applicant shall repair damaged curbing and parking lot surface areas to the satisfaction of the Public Services Director and Community Development Director. Again, we're not looking for a full resurfacing by any means, but we did notice some damaged areas out there that should be repaired. With that, that concludes our report. I'd be happy to respond to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your thorough report. Any questions for staff?
Through the chair.
Commissioner Chase.
In regards to the parking lot repairs, I mean, what exactly specifically are we talking about? Because isn't that a city lot behind there, technically?
It's not, actually. It's a private lot. It's one of the few private lots that we have. So these parking spaces actually are part of the property that is shared by Cleo's and this particular restaurant. And so we're looking at specifically, like I mentioned, you can take a look yourself, there's some damaged curbing, actually broken curbing out there that needs to be replaced. It is private. And then, as I mentioned, plantings are completely missing from at least one planter and overgrown in at least one other. So again, the idea here is to replace missing plant material, replace distressed planting material, make sure that there's irrigation to any replaced materials so that they survive. And then again, we're looking at damage. If something is damaged, curbing, surface, that be repaired. So we're looking at repair, not new construction.
How extensive are the repairs? I'm just curious, because I haven't walked back there. Is it significant, or?
It's not significant. I walked back there and, you know, there's broken curbing. There's, you know, again, like I mentioned,
The curbing, you talk about like when you pull into a stall and then you got like those curb stops, or the actual curb from the parking lot to like the sidewalk?
Curbing around the planters, for example.
Okay.
Probably a car, you know, ran into the curbing and broke it at some point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Through the chair.
Commissioner Mishra.
I have a question about city requirements on trash. And feel free to defer trash management to the applicant. But was there any consideration for, it seems like this restaurant will generate more trash, and I didn't see any trash requirements.
Actually, conditions of approval for the architectural review permit. Condition 3, the restaurant operator shall ensure that garbage and recyclables are properly stored inside the appropriate garbage enclosure. Actually, fortunately, on this particular property, there is an actual enclosure.
Oh,
You
there
don't
is.
find that
Okay.
everywhere in our town, in this area. But here they do share an enclosure with Cleo's Steakhouse, and so that's good to know and good that they have that. So we're asking that they use that enclosure and work with Recology essentially to handle their waste.
Okay, I didn't see that on the plans, that's why I was, is it shown anywhere?
You know, we have a condition of approval. Let's see. You know, what we could do is have them with their construction documents, you know, actually show that enclosure. I'd be happy to do that. So that condition number 3, we can expand that to indicate as part of the construction plans, they show the enclosure, trash enclosure on the site. The trash enclosure is actually located right up against the building next to Cleo's Steakhouse in that vicinity.
No, that's the ADA.
Any other questions?
Through the chair.
Commissioner Peterson.
I hadn't thought of that, but that trash enclosure is one of the interesting challenges for the success of the restaurant, which I'm very happy to see the proposal. But trash enclosures are not a very attractive feature, and to have it right in the area where all the customers are going to park is it's nothing more than a challenge to make sure it's clean and painted and so on. But that always seems to be easy to say yes to, and then during the operation it becomes much more of a challenge. Anyway, there are 3 handicap spaces back there, and on sheet A0 there are quite a few lines there which I take to be lines indicating how a handicapped person would approach the restaurant. And those lines show a handicapped person entering the rear door and the side door as possibilities. Did you see that? And in the staff report it says the rear door and the side door are primarily exit doors, even in the case of fire, was mentioned in the staff report. Could you fill me in on that? Are handicapped people going to be encouraged? Did you discuss that with the applicant? It looks like someone did an analysis on this.
You know, what I'd like to do with that is to make sure that at the time of building permit issuance, or as part of the plan check leading up to building permit issuance, that the accessible parking stalls are located, you know, as close as possible to the primary access point, and that the ADA requirements for those accessible stalls and the path of travel are addressed. I'm not really prepared to do that right here, but our building staff will be as part of plan check, and it may mean that in terms of locating those accessible parking spaces, they may need to be relocated from where they're shown on the plan.
Okay.
Because the intent, as I mentioned, the intent is that the primary point of access to this restaurant be from San Mateo Avenue. So as far as the location, path of travel, signage, et cetera, for the accessible stalls, that should be reviewed and made to conform with the building code.
Through the chair.
Well, I have another couple parts to this one. So the average handicapped person is going to be traveling possibly in a wheelchair all the way out to San Mateo Avenue to get into the restaurant, right? Is that the idea?
As I indicated, the idea would be to look at the location of the accessible parking stalls to make sure that we can shorten that path of travel, given the fact that the primary point of entry would be San Mateo Avenue. So we'll need to look at that.
Okay. The next item is that, and I'm trying to think very positively about this because I think it's a great idea, and I'm trying to bring up things that will keep it a great idea. Handicapped people, I'm sure, enjoy this food as much as anybody, but the major challenge to this application is getting the customers from the parking lot, which is all the way at the back of the property, up to that entrance point on San Mateo Avenue. I don't know if you've been there at night, but the lighting is not very good. And unless there's an improvement in lighting in that parking lot and virtually a similarly lighted path up the sidewalk along the side of the building all the way to the front, it may be hard for a customer to believe that they're going to be making that trip safely, and both with regard to being able to see where they're going and not having unfriendly encounters possibly on the way. Did staff have the chance to discuss that with the applicant? I didn't see any lighting proposals in here.
Yeah, there is lighting being proposed, new lighting being proposed along the side elevation, and As shown on the submitted plans, and as I mentioned in the staff report, there are 12 angle parking spaces that are along the side of the building on the court that you enter from San Mateo Avenue. So there is the opportunity to provide parking, accessible parking, close to the San Mateo Avenue frontage and front door. And with the new lighting being proposed by the applicant along that elevation, that area should be better lit and will be made accessible.
Through the chair.
Commissioner Chase.
You know, I sat on the ARC review commission planning, whatever, group when we went through this. And, excuse me, it seemed to me as if we had a better set of plans, if you will, or a better presentation, because we could see everything. You know, we saw what their murals were. We saw in color what the idea of the building was going to be. And I think it would probably have been helpful had we been able to retain some of that for this meeting for the commissioners who weren't part of that ARC review. Because as Commissioner Peterson has brought up some issues, a lot of those were addressed at the ARC review meeting. And it's unfortunate that you can't really see it the way that we saw it at that meeting.
I would just like to comment, I also said on the architectural review, we haven't had the applicant yet given the opportunity to present, and some of these may be answered once we have the applicant be able to speak and do the presentation. So I would recommend that we continue with any questions you might have for staff, and then give that opportunity to the applicant to address.
Through the chair, I
Commissioner.
do want to address the staff on this one, which is that the accessible path is already shown for patrons visiting this spot, visiting this facility. But, you know, we shouldn't forget the fact that there may be employees that are challenged as well. And so locating it right in the front also puts the employee at a disadvantage. And so just want to bring that point up, that distributing it to the front doesn't really solve the problem. The requirement is to provide an accessible path free of obstruction.
That's
not
correct.
necessarily something that's closer to the front entrance.
The idea really is to provide accessible parking spaces that are free of obstructions, but you're at the same time trying to minimize the distance. And so we'll look at that through plan check, both for the front entry for the patrons and at the rear for any employees.
Thank you.
So it's a question of obstacles, impediments, and distance.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, through the chair.
Commissioner Peterson.
I just want to explain, the reason I was asking these questions now is I wanted to see if staff had considered these and if they'd had any discussion with the applicant ahead of time. I do want to hear the applicant's statements. I'm sure they'll be very positive, but I wanted to see what staff has been doing, because I remember when this was Hatlow's Market and it went through several different tenants, and they meet a challenge, but not very successfully. So I was hoping to see that there was some research on this. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank you for your questions. Any others? I just want to comment that during architectural review, many of these questions asked, Commissioner Chase indicated, were asked. And there were various things. Safety was a big factor. Addressing it from a lighting point of view, accessibility, safety from entrance from two ends of the building, and what happens when you have a back entrance, when it becomes an unsafe environment when you have a back entrance. So there were a variety of discussions that took place, and so during Planning Commission discussion at the end, I'd be happy to give more points of view. And I think these questions are really important, and I'm glad they do come up, and it allows the thinking to come out and address those areas, and also gives the applicant the opportunity to speak to them, so I appreciate that. If there are no other questions, I'd like to bring the applicant forward. Step to the microphone, please. State your name and your project, description of your project.
Yes, hi, my name is Arnaldo Hernandez. I'm the lead designer. Oh, is this on? Is it on?
Yes, it is on.
Okay, sorry. As far as the description, he did a pretty good job of describing what we're trying to do. The idea is, as you mentioned, they have a much smaller restaurant, few businesses down, and they're looking to enlarge, and get a better customer base, and they're designing this in such a way where they're looking to make it modern, and improve the look of the building itself. So right now, as you mentioned, the entrance is on the side, and it's not, as far as the San Mateo Avenue side of it, it doesn't have any look to it, and we've been working with planning to get that done. As far as the mural, I wasn't sure what he was mentioning that it wasn't shown in this package, the colors of it, or what was it?
Yeah, not quite as, the way it was shown in our ARC review.
Because you should have the same material.
I
Through the
believe you
chair,
brought some,
I
excuse me.
think there are, colored copies of the
Yeah.
murals as part of your packages, yes.
Well, I see this, referring to these as the murals, and I understand that, but my point was that when we were in the ARC review, we had we had this whole side, panel of the building itself with the proposed.
And that should also be in the package. That should still be,
I didn't see it.
But continue, please.
yeah. And is there any other questions? Or?
If you can speak to some of the comments, some of the questions that were raised regarding to safety and lighting and some of your decisions around that.
Yeah.
You did a very good presentation. ARC review was very well presented.
Okay. So as far as the ADA, he was, wondering about that. We can look at, where it's at. It's definitely, I agree with you that it's in the back. They do have to travel all the way to the front. Now that we're trying to emphasize a front entry, we can look at having it more centered, not necessarily towards the front, and see how we can make it work. I mean, one of the biggest challenges is that there isn't that much parking there, and we are sharing it with another restaurant that they're both pretty large, so they'll have a lot of traffic. But we're definitely more than willing to look at the ADA, path of travel question. As far as lighting, along the whole, what would that be, the left side, there's lighting proposed and actually existing that we're going to improve, and the awning along the front, along the back. If we need to look at maybe better lighting for the actual parking lot, the poles that are there, we can look at that. That wouldn't be out of the question. That's pretty much all. What was the other? That was the main.
You covered them. You just brought visuals with you at the meeting that created, as Commissioner Chase indicated, more of a picturesque look, and so it gave us much more of a visual. However, you did address those areas.
All right.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Oh.
Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak on this project?
Could I ask the applicant to
Yes.
come back? I have one question.
Yes.
The diagram on sheet A0 shows handicapped persons can come from those parking spaces into the restaurant through the rear door. Is that correct? Will that door be open and have a handicap button to be able to push and have it open?
Well, the idea with the path of travel is shown. It's really more general, meaning for employees, in case we do have any handicapped employees. The main door is definitely the front. The side door it's already labeled as a fire exit door only. It's not meant to be a primary. What we can do is clarify on the plans and on the final set of plans that will go to building or you guys, showing that that'll be an employee only, or more a fire exit, the back door.
Okay, I just find the sheet A0 being misleading then because it shows arrows going from the parking
Right.
parking stalls into the back door and into the side door.
Yeah.
If that's not the case,
We'll clarify that.
I think it hurts the restaurant a lot in that forces any handicapped person to go all the way to the front.
Right. No, I agree with you on that. And as I mentioned, we'll try to get the parking stalls for the ADA closer, more towards the middle.
Oh, in other words, put them in those slanted spots or something?
If possible, if we can make it work, we're more than willing to look at that.
Is it possible you might consider making the entrance on the corner of the San Mateo Avenue side of the building so that the people who are walking up the side of the sidewalk can readily see that there's an entrance there and they don't have to gather in front of the door on San Mateo Avenue?
We can look at that. We can look at
Just an idea. I figure if I don't say these things, it's not going to come to you out of the air.
Right.
And even though this is a handicap individual access diagram,
Right.
human beings have the same, of all shapes and sizes, have the same interests as handicapped people. If they're going to a restaurant, they want to go into the restaurant. They don't want to travel all the length of the building to try to find the front door.
Right. No, I
And
agree.
I'm being a little rude here, but I want to make sure I get the concept
I understand
across.
what you mean.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
If you can please state your name.
My name is Wendy Amorose. My concerns, I'm so appreciative of, I'm not sure how to direct you, but Mr. Peterson's comments, almost everything he said was on my list. I would just like to add that there is consideration not only for aesthetic lighting, but safety lighting. As I read this, it's aesthetic only.
Right.
I want it in writing. There is not enough lighting in San Bruno. We do not have enough street lights. That lot is creepy. So I would just like that emphasized, please. Also, I don't like these murals. If it's not presented in a more professional, cleaner fashion, I would disagree with this. I absolutely think this is hideous, and I would want to see exactly the artistic layout, not blurred photos. I don't approve of this. I think it is not a representation of the best that we can do, because I don't feel this is a representation of what you guys want to represent with your restaurant to bring people in. I would like to see the artist's rendition to show us exactly what you mean, because as this is right here, this is very amateur, and I find it gives a very negative feeling to me. And the other thing I would just like to address, the handicap issue. I am concerned that frequently those that are disabled go through the rear of the building right next to the trash. I think it's disrespectful. I also agree that places should be in the back, maybe a place for an employee, but primarily the disabled places should be near the front of the restaurant to draw them in so they are not always put in the back of a building and forced to travel an additional 150 feet or whatever it is in the rain after getting out of their vehicle, setting up their wheelchair, whatever they have to do. I'm not saying they have to be on the front curb, but I'm just saying if we could give a consideration of trying to traverse this area in inclement weather, and even just to feel supportive of the nature that their customers we want to enjoy having in our facility.
Excuse me, I just want to interrupt for a moment. If you can direct your comments to the commission.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's
This
okay.
is my first time with you.
That's quite all right. It's fine.
But anyway, I mean, those are my feelings, and I very, very much support the idea. I think it's great. I'm very impressed with all the improvements, and I just wanted to make those suggestions about disabled folks and the lighting.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. They're noted. Anyone else who wishes to speak on this project? Seeing none, we'll close the public comments and public hearing and bring it back to Planning Commission discussion.
Through the chair.
Commissioner Chase?
again, I just have to go back to the architectural review meeting that we had, where the color renditions were so much clearer. It showed, yeah, there you go. I mean, that was certainly much better for everybody else to see. I already know what it looked like. You know, I mean, but for any of the commissioners who were not there, or for the general public who didn't get a chance to see, I mean, I agree, you know, the photos here are blurry and, you know, they don't look that great, but when we had the presentation, it was way better. It was easier to see, to fully understand the concept of what they were trying to, you know, put forth. And it was just far better than what we have in our existing packet right now. And then in regards to having foot traffic in the front, I always thought that it was the idea of the transit corridor plan to have foot traffic on San Mateo Avenue. So if we're having people go up to the front door, that's where we want people to be. That's where we want people to see, you know, oh, here we go. This is where the entrance is. Oh, look at all these people here, man. That place must be great. You know, whatever. I mean, that was the whole idea, or one of the ideas behind that. So, I mean, I don't know what it would entail to make a side or make the front entrance on the side, but if you take a look at what is being passed around now, I think it's much clearer, and it's a much easier plan to take a look at and to digest, if you will.
Thank you, Commissioner Chase. Any other questions or comments from?
Through the chair, I'd like to mirror everyone else's comments. I sat on architectural review, and the materials that were presented were much more like this. Very professional, very well thought out, much easier to see the concept that they were trying to put forward. And for the person who wanted to see, I'd like to share that with you, just so you can feel comfortable in what we're talking about this evening. You can take it back to your seat.
Well, that's a world of difference.
Isn't it now? Yeah. You can pass that around to anybody else who wants to see it too.
Yes, thank you, Ken.
Feel free.
One question for staff, if I'm still.
Go ahead.
Does Cleo's Restaurant access the parking lot for their customers through the back of the building? I don't recall.
I don't know for sure.
Because they may have some need of that handicap parking towards the rear of the building as well. So
They,
before we move forward with the conversation, let's check to make sure that the adjacent neighbor isn't encroached upon by our moving things around.
Their primary entry is also from San Mateo Avenue.
I understand that.
And I think that in any case, I'll recommend a condition of approval that as far as looking at the final location of the accessible parking spaces be located to serve not only the patrons but also the employees, and also meet our California Building Code requirements. And so with that, the California Building Code is going to look at path of travel, minimize distance, minimize or avoid any obstructions, look at such things as slope, et cetera. So I think with that condition, the locations for accessible parking spaces will be dispersed, probably, you know, one or two at near the entry, I'll say it that way, near San Mateo Avenue, and one or two probably central or to the rear of the building. Also accessible and meeting building code requirements as far as location, size, signage, et cetera. So we can take care of that.
Yeah, thank you.
I would also say, too, in terms of the presentation on the murals, I would agree. What we saw at the Architecture Review Committee, we had the pleasure, really, of a nice presentation from the applicant with, you know, full drawings and whatnot. If there's any concern, hesitation on the part of the Planning Commission, we can always ask, say, as a condition of approval, again, here from the Commission, that the murals go back to the Architecture Review Committee, let's say, for final approval, just to make sure everybody's comfortable with what has been proposed. We can certainly do that. You can do that as a condition. The intent, as I understand it, though, the intent really is what you saw, what some of you saw at Architecture Review, is what's being proposed tonight. There's no difference, as far as I know. But if there's any concern about that, we can have it, you know, go back to the Architecture Review Committee for, you know, a last look to make sure that, you know, the committee sees what actually is going to go on the side elevation. So you could do that. And I do have a couple of recommended conditions of approval whenever you're ready.
Through the chair, just a question for the staff. For your additional recommendations, do you have a quality that you're anticipating for these images in terms of what is the expected quality in terms of longevity of the images and how it's presented?
It's a good question. And in terms of what we saw, we saw the images that you just saw, actually, perhaps even larger, but that kind of collection of images that was just presented to you is kind of what we saw at architectural review. Again, if the applicant has more information now in terms of application, how it's going to be applied, et cetera, you might want to ask the applicant, for your information now in terms of not just its appearance, which now you have, a little bit more information on that, but perhaps the applicant can provide more information in terms of how these images would be applied and the longevity, the experience with this sort of thing. So, if they're prepared, if you're interested and they're prepared, that would be a great question for them.
Commissioner Mishra, would you like me to call the applicant back to this?
Yes, please.
If you can please stick the podium and for a couple questions, please.
Through the chair, before he begins, do you have the original photos for the staff report?
I have,
It might be helpful for the rest of the commission to take a look at those.
I have the photos that we used for the reproductions. I have those here.
That
I'd
would
be
be
happy
great.
to share those.
Thank you.
I also see that when you're trying to enlarge pictures to give a different image, if you don't have those pixels in the right place, it distorts them, so it does not give the visual that we actually saw. So thank you for coming back. Commissioner Mishra, if you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes. Could you speak about the application of the photos, whether it's on vinyl or it's painted, or what kind of material it's going to be, and what's the expected life of the image?
It's an image on vinyl, very similar to the way VJ's restaurants, the way they do it. You're probably familiar, everybody should be, they're all over the place. That's the idea behind it. It'll be, depictions of landscapes and different things from the Philippines, kind of trying to portray, the authenticity of what they're trying to, sell there. Different, that's the idea. As far as longevity, vinyl, good quality, same as the quality you would get at a place like BJ's, those type of restaurants. The pictures, to be honest, they're not that great quality than what we're showing there. And we can give you, like he mentioned, we can give you ones that show exactly what we got. The owners do have another restaurant in Newark that has those murals on the inside and on the outside, which we can bring you samples of, so you see that, what they look like. They're outside and inside, like I said, and they're meant to last, and they're vinyl, not painted. That's it.
So they're vinyl applied on a substrate, or
Right.
is it?
Like glass, some permanent behind, so it'll be nice and glossy and well lit.
Any additional questions from anyone else for the applicant?
Through the chair.
Yes, Commissioner Peterson.
So, I see there's three, are there three murals or are there five? On the elevation, I see what appears to be windows, but when I look closer, I see three of them are designated as murals, but I wondered if the ones near the San Mateo Avenue are actually windows.
The two in the front are windows. The
Oh.
idea is that you can see through, they'll be transparent, so you can see at night, like.
The tables
Right,
and so on.
right. So just the back three will be murals.
And those are because the kitchen is inside, right?
Exactly. And we do have windows above just for lighting, if you
Right.
notice, above the murals on the back,
see.
just for natural lighting, but that's the idea, yes.
Right. Some restaurants actually have windows into their kitchen, so you can watch the food preparation underway, which is, some diners like that, I don't know.
Right, yeah.
Okay,
Do you have any additional questions?
I would be hoping for a landscaping plan, a lighting plan, and a revised access plan.
No problem.
I'm willing to vote for this. I feel very positive, but I feel like I've gotten half of the presentation I expected. I sensed the enthusiasm and the skill, but I didn't see the documentation indicating what's really going to happen. And I remain very concerned about the lighting around the site. It's a fact of life. Lighting is safety. Lighting is visibility. And if that area around your restaurant is well lit, it's going to literally attract patrons. But if it's dark, it could drive them away.
Yeah, and we're
that-
willing to work.
Especially that back, I mean, I use Mastic Avenue all the time.
Right.
I'm well familiar with it. The part of it is horrible driving conditions because it's narrow, it's got quite a curve on the surface. People who know it go very fast. People who don't know it go really slow. People pull in and out left and right. If you can't see what's going on, it can be very uncomfortable.
Yep.
So I don't like to say I've made up my mind, but I will say that I'm disappointed in the quality of the presentation, and I think it makes me concerned about how the implementation of the restaurant will work. I have the feeling that the food quality and the service are good, but the environment is making me a little nervous. And I apologize for having to be so critical, but I've seen this property for 30 years, and it's been a challenging property, if that perhaps is
Yeah,
the word.
I know what you mean.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other planning commission discussion?
Well, through the chair, the issues that, Commissioner Peterson brought up about the lighting plan, about the irrigation plan, and what was the third issue that was?
Landscaping, lighting, and access.
Access. So, how-
My point is, if the handicap can't get in that back door, it's like saying, you guys are second class, you can roll all the way up to the front door if you want to get in.
what, I don't see it that way because I know the idea was not to have a rear entrance for any of the patrons. That's
I'm
why
just-
there was a solid door actually put in there as well. But how would we address moving forward, if we were to try and move forward with this one way or another, with the lighting issues and the landscape issues and obviously the, accessibility issues? I mean, would we have to bring it to another meeting, or how? I'm just kind of curious how we could expedite it.
Let's ask our director. Director
So
Walter.
through the chair, a recommendation for you, I think that you could add conditions of approval to this project this evening, and let me offer some suggestions in terms of conditions of approval. So if we could, looking at condition 3 that had to do with the trash enclosure, condition 3 under the architectural review permit on page 8 of 11, that could be reworded somewhat to read, the restaurant operator shall ensure that garbage and recyclables are properly stored inside the existing garbage enclosure. The garbage enclosure shall be shown on the construction documents. So there is one on site. It's not near the entry. We want to see it on the construction documents. I had mentioned a couple of other suggested conditions of approval earlier. I'll repeat those. One is the applicant shall prepare and install a landscape and irrigation plan to address missing or distressed landscape materials in the exterior planting areas within the parking lot area to the satisfaction of the Community Development Director. Another condition recommended, the applicant shall repair damaged curbing and parking lot surface areas to the satisfaction of the Public Services Director and Community Development Director. Then going on, talking about accessibility, the accessible parking spaces. Accessible parking spaces shall be located to satisfy the needs of employees and patrons in accordance with the California Building Code requirements to the satisfaction of the chief building official. Chief building official is going to look at both employees and patrons. He's going to be looking at path of travel, making sure that slope and obstructions are addressed and not there. So I think your concerns would be addressed with a condition like that. And then finally, pertaining to the lighting, the applicant shall provide an exterior lighting plan to provide for the safety of employees and patrons to the satisfaction of the Community Development Director. So we're not talking about aesthetic lighting. We're talking about lighting for safety. And we're talking about lighting for employees and patrons. So we're talking about the parking lot area to the rear and the parking lot area next to the building along the side elevation. So I think those recommended conditions would address your concerns, or at least the concerns I heard. You also had a concern about the murals. Now, you got a little bit more information in terms of how they would be applied on vinyl, probably a glass surface underneath, just to make sure that they're flat and adhere well. Again, we could add another condition if you want further assurance in terms of what you'll see, what the community will see in the application. We could ask as yet another condition that the murals be submitted to the Architecture Review Committee for final approval. And at a committee meeting, there could be a more detailed presentation made and maybe even some information, perhaps samples of the application, how the vinyl would be applied. And that's to your discretion.
Through the chair.
Commissioner Peterson.
I don't understand. Are the murals behind glass windows or mounted to the front of a panel?
I believe they're mounted to the front, but again, the applicant would be the best to describe that. That's my understanding.
That's exactly right.
And could I ask you to return to the podium so we can get that on the record?
Yeah, as far as the murals, the way we can do them and the way we're looking at doing them right now, and we're getting quotes on different applications, is having glass behind it that's not see-through, and then having the vinyl applied to that. So essentially it's like a window, but then you don't see in. That way,
Right.
that'll give you a nice flat, glossy surface.
Right.
That'll stick really well and it'll last.
Is it possible you might put them on the other side for, I'm thinking it might be less likely to be vandalized?
Oh, on the back of it?
Yeah, behind
We
the
can look into
glass.
that if it works. If
I
it's
mean,
not,
I'm just
if it's not
asking.
too.
I think of facilities and vandals, and it's a increasing concern these days.
Yeah, we can look into that.
Do you have any of these murals at the other restaurant, the one on Cemetery Avenue or the one in Fremont, I believe you said, or Hayward?
Newark.
Newark, sorry.
Yeah, they're outside and they're just there. They're not.
Have you ever
protected.
had them vandalized?
I don't know. That's the owner.
Okay.
That's the owner.
So just for the record, the owner has indicated they have not.
Right.
And it could be just the location, it could be the lighting, who knows,
That's
right? There
what
are
it
a
is.
variety of different reasons. I wanted just to understand, because sometimes, if they are glass, there's lots of reasons that people vandalize. So I just want to be precautious here.
Right. No problem.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, through the chair.
Commissioner Smith?
I'm pretty familiar with the application of vinyl, especially on glass. I don't know if this is the form or not, but I wouldn't recommend putting it behind the glass because the reflections from sun will take away from what you're trying to achieve with the mural.
The look.
Right. My preference would be that they be on the outside of the glass. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments for the applicant, if you can please take a seat, and we'll come back to planning
Thank you.
discussion.
Through the chair.
Commissioner
In
Mussolini?
regards to the handicap access, condition 8 under architectural review permit, conditions of approval clearly show conformance with disability access standards, i.e. path of travel, ramps, doors, restroom facilities, and drinking fountains. I think it's already there. I think we already covered it.
There, unless you want to just confirm, I mean, the chief building official is going to be looking at this, it's going to go through plan check.
Through the chair, I just want to add that
Commissioner Mishra?
it is there, but if you look at the picture on page 11, and you see the black car behind the white van, you don't have 44 inches for the wheelchair to come through. So it does need to be checked.
Oh. They drove up on the curb that day.
Did it?
Yeah, there's a handicap,
Oh, great.
we had discussed that at architectural review.
There's no wheel lock there?
No.
All right.
During architectural review, we did take a look at that pretty thoroughly, and we took it apart as much as we're taking it apart tonight, being thorough. And so I understand your concerns, because we had those same types of questions and concerns as well, and I just wanted to convey that to
Thank you.
my colleagues.
Through the chair, if I could, one of the issues you raised was a little bit of concern about our employees and patrons both being addressed. And perhaps, just to be clear, we could work with that condition and, add to it, indicating that something like clearly show conformance with disability accessibility standards for both patrons and employees, something like that. And that way, I think there was a little bit of concern about front of the house, rear of the house, that sort of thing, and where the accessible parking spaces would be located. We could do that.
Thank you. All right, it looks like there are no other questions. I'd like to,
Through the chair.
Commissioner Mishra.
I would like to recommend that the Planning Commission approve architectural review permit AR 14-003 and use permit 14-015 with staff recommendations based on findings of fact 1 through 13 and conditions of approval. I have 28. Is that correct?
How many do you have?
28.
28.
We've got
24 on paper.
I added, well, the accessible one we were just modifying, so that
Okay.
just, we have the one on lighting.
25.
We have the one having to do with the landscaping.
26.
We have the one to do with repairing the parking lot area.
27.
And
The murals.
The mural.
on the murals, do you want to
28.
add, do you want the murals to come back to the Architecture Review
I do.
Committee?
28.
28.
Second.
Discussion? I do want to ask one clarification on one of those about Commissioner Peterson indicated access, landscaping, lighting, and relocating the front. Was that part of the, of your
In terms of
motion?
relocating the front, I'm not clear on that.
Well, Commissioner Peterson indicated that he would like it to be considered to have it more to a corner versus being in the front.
Could I, through the chair, could I clarify that? There's a corner that, as you turn, say, on San Mateo Avenue, there's a corner as you turn down past the angled parking spaces. And if the entrance were diagonal on that corner, you could see it to enter from San Mateo Avenue, but you could also see it to enter from the diagonal spaces and even somewhat from further in the rear of the parking area. Whereas now the only place you can see that front entrance as being an entrance is if you're on San Mateo Avenue. I would go this far as say, I wouldn't make that a condition of approval, but I'm just throwing it out there as an idea to improve the visibility of the entrance, not only from San Mateo Avenue, but from the rear of the property.
I'd like to
Chair?
comment
I-
on that, if you can. Oh.
Yeah, I would actually want to make that a condition of approval for the applicant to consider a corner access, because then it'll give both streets prominence, and it'll allow that side street to have some legitimate life. And I want to consider it as a condition of approval.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Did I second that?
Yes, you did.
Well, I'm not going to second that because I don't like that idea of putting a condition that they have to now change the entrance of the restaurant. I mean,
To explore, not to change it,
Yeah.
but to explore it.
Okay. I'd like to have my comments, sitting on the architectural review and looking at it very thoroughly, and our director was very detailed on all of the questions. I support the entrance being on the front. I think there's balance. I think it's appropriate to be on the front. I understand and I can hear all of the specifics about safety and sort of beauty from that little alleyway, but let's face it, it's not a beautiful alleyway. And I don't know that changing the front, I believe strongly that it would take away from the quality of the front to have a cornered area and the integrity of the layout of the restaurant. It would compromise that. And so I don't support that condition being a condition. I'm certainly willing to say it can be a consideration, but I don't support it as a condition.
Through the chair.
Commissioner
Yeah, I'd like to
Casati.
mirror your comments and just say that you guys did yourself a disservice this evening by not presenting as you did at the Planning Commission, or the Architectural Review Committee, because it would have been a very different experience.
So did I hear you say, Commissioner Casati, that you are supporting the corner or not?
No, I do not. I'm mirroring your
You're mirroring, okay,
comments.
just want to be
Through the
clarify
chair.
that. Commissioner
Since my
Mishra.
second motion carrier didn't approve, I would say let's call it question with 28 conditions of approval. I'd like to call the motion to question.
And if we could, one more. In terms of condition 3, we added a little bit of wording in terms of the recycling and garbage,
Right.
and I'm assuming that that's part of it as well.
That was part of it.
Okay.
If Commissioner Chase agrees?
so what are you asking me to do now on my second?
Yeah, you confused me too.
Just so that I'm perfectly clear, because I'm all for it except for the side entrance being a part of a condition.
So I'm calling the motion to question based on findings of fact 1 through 13 and conditions of approval 1 through 28 with a modification to condition of approval number 3 as to modify the language to state that the existing garbage enclosure will be shown on the contract documents. And this will not take into consideration condition of approval number 29, which is consideration of the relocation of the entrance to the side.
Okay, so you're removing that part of it.
Yes, I am.
Then
And
I
I'm calling
will,
it to question.
again, second that motion.
Any further discussion?
One item, someone during this recent discussion said something about the bad-looking alley. Nothing is going to rescue the bad-looking alley. I would just like to put forward to the commission and to the applicant that if that alley is perceived as a bad-looking alley, that is a very dangerous phenomenon for the benefit of the restaurant. You'd probably be better off making a deal to make that a good-looking alley somehow, and you need the cooperation of the next building. I'm just putting this out there, and I don't want to delay the vote anymore, but that is a scary concept.
Thank you for your comments. If there are no further comments, call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
There is a 10-day appeal process before any action can take place on this project. The next item is 5C, and that's 406-418 San Mateo Avenue. And it is a request for vesting tentative track map and conditional use permit to create up to 5 ground floor airspace commercial condominiums units within a previously approved mixed-use commercial and residential development per chapters 12.38, 1288, and 12.112 of the San Bruno Municipal Code. The total area involving the commercial condominium units is 6,975 square feet. And staff report, please.
Thank you. The project before us tonight calls for a vesting tentative tract map and conditional use permit to create up to 5 commercial condominium units within a previously approved mixed-use development located at 406 418 San Mateo Avenue. The site is located within the Central Business Zoning District and is also located within the Transit Corridor Plan area. The site itself is 0.95 acres in overall size and is located at the southern entrance to downtown San Bruno on the corner of San Mateo Avenue and Taylor Avenue. The property consists of 4 different lots. The largest lot is developed with the former cinema site, and the 3 smaller sites located directly to the north are currently developed with vacant structures. The City Council approved a 3-story mixed-use commercial and residential development consisting of 6,975 square feet of retail, commercial space, 83 residential units, and 106 subgrade parking spaces. The applicant has since submitted an application for a vesting tentative map and conditional use permit application to create up to 5 ground floor commercial condominium units. This type of application requires review and approval from the Planning Commission. Approval of this application is the first step that will eventually allow the applicant to sell the commercial condominiums individually. The vesting tentative tract map and conditional use permit would be good for a 2-year period with up to a 3-year extension as granted by the Planning Commission. The application, I think this is really important to note, is that this application would not affect the residential component of the project. Therefore, the 83 residential units would continue to be rental units that would be owned and operated by one property owner. Staff has included conditions of approval requiring that the applicant submit CC&Rs. The CC&Rs will set forth the rules for the individual condominium owners and the property owners association. The CC&Rs would be recorded with the final map. I would like to point out one minor oversight within the staff report. Throughout the staff report, we do include 2 project numbers. In the staff report, it's referenced as VTM 14001 and UP 15001. The correct project number is TM 14001 and UP 15003. And that's throughout the staff report and within 2 conditions of approval. Condition of approval number 4 and condition of approval number 1. I'd also like to point out that we did modify 2 conditions of approval. Upon further review, staff has added clarifying language to condition of approval number 1 regarding the applicant's option to extend the vesting tentative map and use permit approvals, and regarding the possibility of phasing the final map. The revised conditions were distributed to the planning commissioners at the beginning of this meeting, and for clarifying purposes, I'll go ahead and read revised condition of approval number 1. Applicant shall file a declaration of acceptance of the following conditions by submitting a signed copy of the summary of hearing to the Community Development Department within 30 days of Planning Commission approval. Until such time as the summary is filed, TM 14001 and UP 15003 shall not be valid for any purpose. TM 14001 and UP 15003 shall expire 2 years from the date of Planning Commission approval unless the final map has been approved and recorded prior to the 2-year date, or the tentative map and use permit are duly approved for extension by the Planning Commission. It is acknowledged that the subdivider is requesting the opportunity to record multiple final maps. Accordingly, the subdivider shall be allowed to record multiple final maps within the initially approved 2-year period or within the allowed period for extension. Condition of approval number 4 was also modified. The only portion of that condition was modified was the project numbers identified. So we changed the project number to TM 14001 and UP 15003. We did send out notification to residents and property owners, and we did not receive any comments or questions regarding the application before the committee tonight. Staff would recommend that the Planning Commission approve the vesting tentative map and use permit application, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. And are there any questions for staff?
Yeah, through the chair.
Commissioner Samut?
Matt, I remember that when we approved the project, we, excuse me, we talked with the developer a little bit about the commercial spaces, and I think we even discussed sizing and the potential number of them, but at that point, I don't believe that they talked about condominiums. Has that just recently transpired?
The initial application was filed, I believe, in July of 2014 for the vesting tentative map application. Due to overall timing, we couldn't bundle the project together, and now we're bringing this item forth to the Planning Commission for
Okay,
review.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. If the applicant can please step forward and present your project, state your name.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jamie Choi. I'm here tonight representing the applicant, Signature Land Advisors. Matt did a great job, as always, presenting the project before you tonight, and so I will just add that we really appreciate the approval of the main project, both by the Planning Commission and the City Council last year, and we're excited about continuing the process towards getting this project built and revitalizing this property at the entrance to San Bruno's downtown. And this is just a step in the process towards completing that vision. And the purpose of the condominiums is simply to add optionality for future tenants. We don't know as of yet who the retail and commercial tenants may be, and we don't know if they would rather rent or would rather own their spaces. And so we're just building that optionality in for to allow us the broadest potential tenant base. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions?
Through the chair.
Commissioner Peterson?
So it's possible that some could be rental spaces, commercial spaces, and some could be purchased?
If the tentative map is approved today and we proceed with a final map, which will be recorded within 2 years, then each of the spaces would be condoized. They could be owned by, they could continue to be owned by the owner of the overall project and rented out. So there is an option to have both condo and both ownership and rental. But when we do the final map, each of the commercial spaces will be condo.
Okay. I was just trying to imagine how you would designate the size of each unit if some of them are going to be purchased and some of them might be rental, but the owner is still going to control the whole process, so that's how you do it.
Right, and we wouldn't be able to, we're not going to file the final map right now because we'll need to get a little bit further along with who the tenants are and creating the spaces so we can figure out exactly where those dividing lines need to be.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to officially open the public meeting, and anyone else wishes to speak on the project, please step forward.
Might want to call it a public hearing.
So once again, my name is Wendy Amorose, and this is my neighborhood. I live right here, so both the restaurant and this corner unit is very, very important to me. My only real concern right now, and please excuse me, I have not been able to read in detail, so the information's probably here. Is there parking, not only for each unit, but also for the public, for the retail? And also, I'd like to, I don't know how parking is calculated, but 1 car per unit is not reasonable. I've lived here 10 years. When I first moved into my neighborhood, there was ample parking in front of my house, down the street, around the street. I now park on the sidewalk, and there is no parking. Every time someone moves out, someone moves in, and there's another car. So I just wanted to put that out there, that one parking place per unit is not realistic, and that we need enough parking for those that will be living there, those that are the proprietors, and also is there parking for patrons.
Thank you. We can take public comment, and then we can address the items after each presenter. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Okay, hearing none, we'll now close the public hearing and bring it back to discussion. And I'd like if our director can address any comments on the parking.
I'd be happy to. First off, the overall project was previously approved by the City Council based on a recommendation from the Planning Commission. And with the particular project, the Plaza project, a parking management plan was part of the overall approval for the project. And so the applicant was required, and it's a condition of approval, that they have this transportation demand parking management plan as part of the project, both the residential component and the commercial component. Essentially, the parking, the enclosed parking within the project is really dedicated to the residential component. The commercial component does not have any specific parking dedicated to it. The intent, though, is that the project would have a variety of measures, including such things as there is a requirement for bicycle parking facilities on site, that both for the residential component and for the commercial component, that the property management provide what we'll refer to as clipper cards or something like clipper cards for the employees and also for the tenants within the project to use public transportation. Keep in mind that this project is within, as you well know, the transit corridors plan, and the intent really is to try to encourage people, both residents and those people using our commercial areas, to use public transit, bus lines, BART, Caltrain, et cetera, and to kind of move in that direction. It's a transition period, which I think the TCP acknowledges that is going to take some behavioral change. There is a bigger picture too here, as the overall transit corridors plan is developed out. It's a 155-acre area. This is one project within it. The intent is that there will be an overall comprehensive parking management plan developed for the entire 155-acre area. So over time, in terms of commercial parking needs, there is the intent as part of this plan to look at the opportunity for, say, above-ground parking garages and for there to be more public parking within the downtown area, within the TCP area. That's part of the plan. It's part of the implementation. It's a long-range plan. It's a 20-year plus plan. But that's clearly a part of it. So, kind of in summary, this particular project is the first one through, so to speak, first one approved. There is a transportation demand management plan that has a number of measures, including encouraging people to use by providing tickets, encouraging them to use mass transit, public transit, bicycle, et cetera. And overall, we are expecting to prepare a comprehensive parking management plan for the area and implement that. So that's a little bit of background for you. I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for us?
One question.
Commissioner
Through the
Peterson.
Chair. If a resident wants to rent out his parking space, is there any provision against that?
Within the overall property management plan, that sort of thing would be addressed. At this point, that's still to be developed. And so as far as assigned parking, we know the count, it's 106 parking spaces, but in terms of
whether all of those spaces are assigned or not, or even if they are assigned, if somebody could, say, rent a space, that would be something that would be discussed as part of, addressed, I should better say, addressed as part of the property management plan, which is yet to be addressed,
Right.
prepared.
Thanks.
It'd be interesting to have frequently asked questions around parking. Because some of
Yes.
those items are not necessarily common for my experience, so there could be other, and that was a good comment, a good question, rather. So I'm not giving you a task to do, but I think that as we approach those types of things, that those frequently asked questions in the different areas are useful. Prompts thinking. Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
Through the chair.
Commissioner
Just
Chase?
so that I'm clear, would that be, Justin, you're saying through the CC&Rs in regards to potentially being able to rent out a stall? Is that
In terms of the
the residential part of it?
In terms of the CC&Rs and the requirement for a parking management plan for the project, the concept of assigning parking spaces will be addressed. So, for example, the opportunity to have, say, 1 or 2 assigned parking spaces, and then, could you rent out one of your assigned parking spaces? I presume that would be addressed as part of the parking management plan and CC&Rs for the project.
That's what I was thinking. Thank you.
Any others? Okay. Bring it back to discussion or motion.
Well, through the chair, I suppose I will make a motion that the planning commission approve vesting tentative track map application. Let me get the right numbers now. It's wait, I lost it again. TM 14-001 and UP 15-003, is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Based on findings of fact 1 through 9, conditions of approval 1 through 35.
Second?
As modified?
Pardon me?
As modified?
As modified, correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right. Item number 6 is discussion. Staff?
Under staff discussion, we have 2 items. First, we're looking for volunteers for the March Architecture Review Committee meeting. And I talked shortly to the applicant on the one project tonight, the Isla restaurant, and the intent would be that they would try to come back for that March meeting and present their murals and the application. They'll probably have a sample or samples of the glass and the murals that they have in mind. So that would probably be one of the items on that agenda.
I'd like to be on that.
So we
What was the
have-
date on that?
Pardon me?
March
March 12th.
12th, sorry.
So Chair Johnson,
Wait a minute.
Commissioner Chase?
Oh, I was just yawning.
Yes?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, you yawning? Okay. Who else?
I'm in.
Way to go.
Commissioner Biasotti?
Back up.
A backup.
Back up.
Okay, so
That was serious. Maybe.
It's all to it.
Samut,
You want to do it?
Commissioner Samut?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I think it's the first time in history that I've seen this many on ARC review.
Through the chair.
Commissioner.
I just want to point out that the ARC review is also a public meeting.
Yes.
and,
Yes.
If you wanted to attend
Yes,
to
it
see the
is.
mural, you're more than welcome to.
Okay, great, thank you. We've got three volunteers for that meeting. The next item is that I wanted to give you an update on the housing element and the emergency shelter update. So first off, on the housing element, we have been working with HCD, State Housing and Community Development, on our housing element. And basically, we're hearing back from HCD that with some relatively minor modifications, they're willing to certify our housing element, which is very good news. So we'll be bringing that back to the Planning Commission and then on to City Council in the near future for adoption, basically, adoption of the plan. So
that's good news. There are some modifications. We'll talk to you about them when it comes back. We also, though, a few months ago, had a number of items from this current cycle or past cycle that we addressed with all of you, and those had to do with emergency shelters, transitional and supportive housing, reasonable accommodations, and the density bonus. So we presented to you essentially 4 draft ordinances for consideration. 3 of those you recommended to move forward to City Council. City Council adopted. So transitional supportive housing, reasonable accommodation, and density bonus went forward for adoption and were adopted by City Council. Regarding emergency shelters, we had a number of people come one evening. We had a number of letters, comments, written comments regarding emergency shelters. And as you may recall, I'm sure you recall, the intent really was to allow for an emergency shelter or shelters in the vicinity of San Bruno Avenue in the TOD area. And per the current cycle that we're finishing up, actually we did finish up, we're moving into the next cycle. We had identified a need for 32 beds. HCD identified a need for 32 beds for the homeless shelter essentially, and that we had to accommodate that need in a particular zone and allow that need to be satisfied by right. And so in our housing element, we identified San Bruno Avenue, that vicinity, kind of in the area of the grade separation, Caltrain Station, St. Bruno's Church, that area. We had a number of people, 7 or so come, a number of letters besides, and people indicated concerns about, for example, the impact of that population on their homes, their lifestyles, et cetera, the fact that they had gone through quite a bit in terms of the grade separation activity, and they just felt like, could you look at another location for this need? Clearly a need, but could you look for another location within the community? We also received letters along those lines as well. So the commission directed staff to basically table that item. You move the other 3 items forward. As you may recall, they were eventually adopted. In the meantime, we have done additional research. We've talked to the police department because I think your request to us was, well, what is this population? Who is this population? What has the impact been on neighbors, on properties? What are their needs? And so we've contacted the police department and gotten quite a bit of information from the police department. We've contacted some of the providers of beds for homeless in our community to get kind of a sense, again, of the population and needs, impacts, et cetera. We've shared that information with our city manager, and she has shared it, generally speaking, with the city council. So what we're expecting to do is this, that I'm expecting that this matter will go forward as a study session before the city council, and that we would invite the people who attended our meeting that night, we collected their names, and anybody who submitted a letter at that time, along with the housing advocacy groups that we normally notice for such meetings. And it's possible that we'll have that study session on the 26th of this month. That's a tentative date, possibly 6 o'clock, possibly at this location before the city council. And the idea really is to present the research that we've developed based on really your direction in terms of this population, its needs, its impacts, and other options for where, in addition to looking at the San Bruno corridor, San Bruno Avenue corridor, where else could this need be addressed in our community? We're looking at the industrial district, just to provide you that information. So we'll alert the people that attended that evening, plus those people that submitted letters, housing advocacy groups, and present the information that we received from the police department, the housing providers for the homeless population here in the community, and get what I'll refer to as general policy feedback or direction from the city council, which would then help us in terms of perhaps reformulating that draft ordinance that we submitted to you, months ago at this point, and then we would come back to you with that draft ordinance. We would share with you the feedback that we received at that study session and how it helped formulate that ordinance and present it to you, and then we'd be looking for your recommendation, and it would go back to council for adoption. In terms of some of the feedback we received from HCD, this is a fairly critical issue, because what we did hear from HCD, while current draft housing element that I mentioned they commented on looked pretty good to them, this is one issue where they basically said to us, we will only conditionally certify this next housing element, and it will be conditioned on the city of San Bruno adopting an ordinance designating a zone, a district, wherein which you would allow by right the location of an emergency shelter or shelters to accommodate up to 32 beds. So when I said to you a few minutes ago, it was generally well received, but there were some, issues. That's the key issue. So they're basically saying, make a few modifications here or there, but in terms of certifying, until you get that ordinance in place, it's not certified. Once we get this ordinance certified, we can send them a copy, is my understanding, and then basically our housing element for this next period, 2015 through 2023, would be certified. So that's kind of the update. Good news generally that HCD is basically saying you're on track, looks good. We're going to be coming back to the Planning Commission for formal adoption of our housing element, a recommendation on the City Council. So that's kind of where we are with that. Be happy to answer any questions you might have on this.
Through the chair.
Commissioner Peterson.
I know that some study sessions by the council have not been recorded in any form, such as audio or video. Is it possible to, could you possibly tell me, did you plan to have any recording of the study session on the 26th?
I can tell you it's a public meeting. I can't tell you right now whether it will be recorded or not, but I'd be happy to check in with the city manager's office and get back to the full commission and let you know whether it will be recorded and how. In any case, it is a public meeting. And I'll, in any case, get back to you with, the specific date and time.
In any case, I can't make it on that date,
Okay.
and so I was hoping someone would record it, and it would be easier than I would have to hire somebody to go there with a tape recorder.
I would be happy to look into that.
I would say that to provide reasonable public access to a public meeting, it would be appropriate to record study sessions, both the Planning Commission and the City Council. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Are there any other comments? All right, any other,
Through the chair, I'm having a difficult time processing the comment received by, what is this organization that you were just speaking of?
State Housing and Community Development. That's the organization that's the State Department that actually certifies our housing elements.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned at the message that they're sending in terms of it's a mandate. I'm not disagreeing that as a community we do need to address it, and it just concerns me that the message that they're sending is not conducive to creating a more community type solution, but saying it's going to happen or else you're not going to get a certification on a housing element. I just want the message to be a little bit
Less like blackmail.
less like blackmail. I was trying to avoid that word, but thanks. I believe that this is something that we need to move forward on. I don't do well with authority in that sense, and so I'm kind of agitated, to say the least. I'll just leave it at that.
Maybe to clarify, it was one of the implementation measures during this past cycle. The city did really, really well in terms of addressing most, if not all, of the implementation measures. This was one, though, that we didn't. That, we were trying to get these ordinances, adopted and in place. So we did well. We got the density bonus, the supportive housing, what else did we get done? We also got the reasonable accommodation ordinance in place and a whole host of other things. But this was one that we did not complete during this past cycle. They're basically saying, you need to do that.
Right, and I would like for the message to allow the community to feel that they're part of the solution versus promoting or creating ill will, that this is something that's going to be crammed down the throat of our community. I want the community to be part of the solution. I want that message to be sent. We want to hear what people have to say. We want to incorporate, this is a good thing that we're doing for our community. And I want everyone to be part of the solution. I don't want it to say that we have to come up with a solution and that's it. Whether it be a good solution or not, it's going to happen. I don't want that message to be sent across. I want a fruitful discussion. I want something that the community accepts and can live with for the next 30, 40, 50 years. Yeah, so I'm more interested in messaging in the right way. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Don't shoot the messenger.
Sorry, I'm not shooting the messenger.
That's all I can say.
Next item is Planning Commission discussion.
Through the chair,
Commissioner Peterson.
I'd like to ask staff, is it possible to reveal a date that the new planning commission will appear?
I don't have that information like I mentioned at the last meeting. I did pass on the information that, staff was asked to prepare for the process to consider and select a new commissioner. Staff has done that. So at this point, we're kind of waiting for the process to go forward. And as soon as I have that information, I would be very happy to provide it to you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Through the chair.
Commissioner Mishra?
I have a question regarding the transit corridor plan and adoption. Is the city looking to put together guidelines similar to the residential planning guidelines on lighting, parking, trash? I'm trying to see what's the next step for the TOD implementation.
In terms of the transit corridors plan implementation, as you recall, there's a whole chapter on implementation, and we're bringing together an internal working group of staff to address that. There are a whole host of measures, a couple of key ones that we're starting to focus on now. One has to do with development impact fee schedule, because as you can imagine, within the area, as I mentioned earlier, the idea of a parking management plan or access management plan, part of that access or parking management plan will include some sort of parking structure or structures within the downtown. That needs to be financed. And so we need to look at financing mechanisms to do that. So some of the key measures that we're going to be looking at, one would be an overall development impact fee schedule for the TCP area. It's pretty critical, actually, that we do that. Another would be to look at, I'm going to refer to it as not just a parking management, but an access management plan, because it's not just about creating parking spaces, although that's an important part. It's also looking at how can we better connect with our transit and get people to use transit in terms of Caltrain and BART and bus lines and other modes of transportation. So it's a parking access management plan. Those are key. Another one
that we'll be looking at is, and it came up a little bit with the Plaza project, the whole idea, well, the TCP does have standards and guidelines addressing many of the things that you mentioned, Commissioner Mishra, but we do need to go in certain areas further. For example, the downtown, I'll refer to it as downtown, landscape plan or streetscape plan, maybe better said. It has some general guidelines, but what does that look like specifically? And we need to prepare basically a streetscape detailed plan so that as projects like the plaza come forward, there's a detailed adopted plan that, you know, as individual projects come forward, they do their fair share. And in fact, you know, as you're well aware, all of you are well aware, the intent of the TCP is basically new development pays its fair share. So whether it's the impact fee schedule or having a detailed streetscape plan or whatnot, you know, each development does its fair share, but we need to provide the developer with the detailed guides.
Yes.
So yes.
It's coming.
Implementation does include the things you're talking about in a more detailed manner. And yes, we are going to be working on that. You know, we got Measure N in place. That was a major step forward in terms of, at least as a component of that access and parking management plan, now at least we have the opportunity to have above ground parking garages. So that kind of allows that opportunity. So Measure N was kind of a key initial implementation project measure, and there are many more to come, as you're suggesting, and we'll be working on those.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for that. Any
Through the
other
chair, just
Commissioner?
to follow on to that question, one of the things that I notice a lot about downtown, there's a lot of stores I'm beginning to like there, but the parking lots in back of them, particularly between Mastic and San Mateo Avenue, are sort of unattractive. I think that's fair to say. And I was wondering if that work you're doing, like a streetscape plan, would you be having a plan for improving the accessibility and visual attractiveness of those parking lots?
Yes, and in fact, in the CIP, the Capital Improvement Program for the city, one of the projects that's in there is looking at the public parking lots in the vicinity and supporting the downtown and looking at those public parking lots from a variety of different standpoints, viewpoints. One is looking at things like lighting, safety, striping, circulation, and then also looking at a component of that project is to look at such things as the rear elevations of the buildings as you see them, say, from Mastic, and such things as, you know, tonight it came up, you know, trash enclosures, rear entries, you know, temporary structures. What should not only the parking lot areas look like in terms of striping, landscaping, lighting, et cetera, circulation, but in terms of those rear elevations of buildings, what should those look like in terms of trash, recyclables, waste, access? You know, Architecture Review kind of addressed that a little bit with the Isla restaurant, and you followed through tonight in terms of, well, what does that look like? Is it a, you know, a primary entry? Is it a secondary entry? Should there be a canopy or no canopy? You know, to what extent do you accentuate or not those rear elevations? So in the CIP currently, there is a proposed project to look at striping and improvements to the parking lot areas, including lighting, as well as to look at the rear elevations of buildings. In fact, we got a proposal from an individual who actually helped the city work on the residential design guidelines to look at those rear elevations, what's working, what's not, what could be some guides, some standards to upgrade those views. So yes, that's something we're looking at.
Well, I don't think maybe I'm totally off base, but I'm thinking those businesses don't really give a whole lot of attention to thinking about what the rear of their businesses looks like in the aggregate, which is nondescript and not very attractive, and I'm sure that's hurting their business. So that's why I asked that question.
I would agree with that, and I would think too that, let's say, for example, as part of that project, we come up with, as we did with the residential design guidelines and/or standards for, say, the rear elevations, the secondary elevations, I'll call them secondary elevations, as viewed from Mastic. And then, pardon me, we would have an opportunity like tonight with Isla Restaurant, if we had those in place, that there would be kind of a more thought-out theme, concept for how do we treat those areas, you know, in terms of the entries, the trash, service areas, you know, accessible parking and whatnot, so that it's not just case by case, one by one. It's kind of more comprehensively.
Right.
So as it comes to you as an architecture review committee member or planning commissioner, we basically have a set of guidelines for these are some things you should be thinking about, and so we don't miss things, and we also have some guidance in terms of, and examples of what other communities have done. For example, in preparing that material for the CIP, we looked at some other communities. Mountain View, for example, did some of this work in terms of their parking lot areas and tried to, you know, improve them with landscaping, you know, enclosed trash enclosures, more standardizing of some of the features. It's one example. There are many communities that have done this, but that was one example we looked at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more item. Last session, there was a design that was presented. There was no designer's name, identity, location, any of those things. And I would like to advocate to the staff that the staff consider requiring that drawings that come to the commission have a designer's name and contact information. It was, tonight I noticed particularly the designers were easy to see on the drawings, and I come to expect that as good practice, but other professionals and design professionals tell me that they don't believe that's a commonly recognized requirement. I think it should be a requirement for the city so that you know who's doing the design that you're looking at.
We
I'd
typically
like
look
to-
for that. I
Excuse
wouldn't
me.
disagree with you. You know, if that didn't occur, I apologize. That was an oversight. We typically look for the design professional to identify himself, herself, the firm, what have you, with contact information on the signature block of most of our drawings. So if that didn't occur, I apologize. That should occur.
Okay, one of the reasons I ask is for simple information, but the other is maybe that name and contact data isn't there for a reason. Maybe there's a conflict of interest. Maybe there's some adverse effect of knowing where the design came from. Was it copied someplace? I don't know. I don't even know all the questions, but I know that I find it bizarre not to have the designer's name on a product. Most designers would be proud to put it there.
We would typically look to have that on the materials that we submit to the Commission and Architecture Review Committee. So again, I
Okay,
apologize.
great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I have a couple questions.
Through the chair. Just, this is kind of off topic, but South Huntington Avenue, over by the courtyard, on the chain link or link fence that's on the east side of Huntington, I guess it's adjacent to the Pacific Union or Caltrain right-of-way. There's 3, possibly 4 large pine trees that are absolutely dead. No guessing about it. One of them, as a matter of fact, is coming down in pieces some on the west side of that fence. But people park there, and I think most of those people are probably city employees that work at the courtyard. You know, it's a likelihood one of those trees is going to come down on top of a car or person, or both. I don't know what the city can do about it, but if you can have somebody at least, you know, take a look.
Absolutely. Thank you for the information. We'll definitely have somebody take a look. If it's a hazard, sounds like it's an extreme hazard, we'll take a look at it. No question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. I just have a couple things. They don't require for you to take notes on. I just really want to just comment. I really appreciate everyone's input. There was a lot of energy and a lot of thinking that went on. In order for us to continue to grow as a community and to have best practices and to have the image that we all desire for our city, it does require that kind of thinking to come in place. And I'm really glad to hear about the consideration of standards to look at. Many times, I mean, this is entering my 25th year as a commissioner, and of course, Commissioner Peterson has been here probably even longer than that. It is oftentimes the discretion of us looking at projects and doing our best work and our best practices, but it is bringing our best thinking to the project, but it isn't necessarily that we are professionals always in that particular area. I'm certainly not a lighting specialist, but I can certainly speak to safety in other areas. And so I like the fact of thinking about of having a structure and some guidelines in place that are consistent, that we can take a look at. And there's standards. There's basic standards, and there could be leeway to these standards, but I think that's a really good idea when you were speaking to that this evening. When I look at I'm not sure who might have said badly alley, or maybe it was even me, who knows, but if it did, I apologize. I think that we should be looking at all the areas in a particular way. Sometimes historical issues bring on a lot of comments, and so the new owner is taking on sort of the baggage of the previous issues that have been going on. So I think that by having standards and study sessions and other ways to look at this will probably mitigate some of these issues. And I'd like to, I'll speak to you separately, but I'd like to consider setting up a study session for the Planning Commission and taking a look at some of the pressing things that are really important to us as commissioners, and all of us have our own personal expertises and concerns, and I think that having that study session allow us to bring it forward. We've got a lot of good thinking here, and then look at how do we chop that one by one, getting those priorities taking place. When one of the projects tonight said that we put a condition that to have it graffiti done within 24 hours, our vendor's able to do that within 24 hours. I would think graffiti people are right on top of it, but in today's economy, is that possible? What would happen if they didn't do it in 24 hours? What are the issues when we have shared garbage areas and two restaurants that share a garbage area and broken parking things, and it's a private parking, handicap, and you have no control over it because it's a private place, but we take the new project coming in and get the best opportunity to bring it up to the best quality sometimes at the expense of the applicant. I understand the reason behind it, and I support most of those reasons behind it, but I think there's a lot to think about in these areas. And I know that redevelopment has had a huge impact on us as a community. I think there's a lot to think about, and I think a think tank would be a great opportunity to have us. I hope that I have the support of my commissioners, the commissioners, that we get that chance to just brainstorm and think about those situations, and that as we're moving forward, that we're understanding that we are working towards that same page. We have a very cohesive group, and we are certainly not Siamese twins, but we have a lot of good knowledge on this commission, and I respect it, and I look forward to having that chance to have more good thinking together and brainstorming to move forward in our city, and just thinking about signs, the value of when we sat with this last applicant, and there was so much richness that he brought to the table, and tonight that didn't convey that. And so it's just interesting, just interesting. I wanted to just convey my comments on that, and I'd like to put on the table in the near future study session, just to have a good thinking session. So,
We can do that, and I think the idea of developing those standards and guidelines, just like with the residential design guidelines here in San Bruno, I think those are very helpful, for the applicants, for you, and for staff.
absolutely.
And there are probably a number of different areas where we could do that. And there is, something we all probably need to look at. It was like this application for Isla Restaurant tonight. On the one hand, you don't want to overburden an applicant. On the other hand, as they move into a property and you see, broken planters, let's say, or planters without any plant material, or stressed or distressed plant material, it really is the time to freshen up, not necessarily go overboard, overburden a project, but certainly I would hope that in terms of things like that, and you all brought up tonight, lighting from a safety standpoint, yes, this is an existing condition, and yes, this is a new business moving into an existing condition, but, lighting, landscaping, areas of the parking lot that are run down, it really is the time to freshen things up, to make things more safe and in a reasonable way, an appropriate way. We need to do that, I think, collectively.
Thank you. And the last thing I want to indicate, at one of the projects, I believe it was 448 San Mateo, I indicated that I was opening the public meeting, and I just want to clarify that it's a public hearing. So I went on the record to be sure that I clarify that piece of it.
Okay.
So that's all I have to say. And if there is no other comments, if there are no other comments, we adjourn.
Thank you.
All right.